Well, what a game, says nobody. But we just watched Monday Night Football. Chargers somehow won. I don't know if anyone deserved to win, but they did. But first, before we dive in to the details, can I tell you about my friends at Turtlebox? How about this, baby? This is the loudest and most portable, waterproof Bluetooth speaker on the market. It features, here's the key, ultra long battery life. So you got this bad boy barbecuing, playing golf, at the pool, might be cooling down where you're at, inside, hanging out, you want some tunes. That's where my friends at Turtlebox comes in. And here's the best part. Whatever team you're a fan of, let's say you're a big fan of the Tennessee Volunteers. You want to get a little orange. They have pro and collegiate team color combinations right now. Here's what you do. You go to turtleboxaudio.com, use the promo code JOHN, that's JOHN, get $20 off your first order, and as well as free shipping. Awesome thing for tailgating, backyards, swimming, the summers, the winters, you name it. Turtlebox is the best. Again, go to turtleboxaudio.com, enter the promo code JOHN for $20 off your first order and free shipping. That's turtleboxaudio.com, promo code John for the best outdoor speaker on the market. Let's dive into the game. Where do we even start? I don't know. I think sometimes it's easy to make fun of everything you watch in a bad game. And then I think there are nights like tonight where I think it's safe to say two of the most polarizing coaches right now in the NFL. You have one coach that I've been consistently making fun of now for basically a year and a half. His just inept coaching decisions at the most inopportune time. And we'll dive into Brandon Staley a little bit later. Even though he had a blitz call late in this game that might be his greatest call in the history of his coaching career. And then you got Nathaniel Hackett, and the Broncos are just a complete disaster. Penalties, the muffed punt at the end, constantly calling timeouts. It's a disaster. You're just sitting there going, is this the National Football League? One thing I learned when I was in the NFL, there are people coaching at non-Division I schools, at Division II schools that are better individual. I'm not talking head coaches. I'm just talking position coaches. I think we believe, and I know I did before I went to the NFL, that just because you're at the highest level means you're the best. That is not true. Just because you're coaching in the NFL does not mean you're the best coach. There are coaches better than other people. The reason a lot of these people get hired is because of their friends, because of a network. No different than life, right? I'm sure you work with a lot of people in whatever industry you are in, and you go, yeah, I work with some high-level people, and I work with some slappies. We all have that experience no matter what you do. You could be working on a car lot, you can be working at Google, or you can be working for the Denver Broncos. Just because you're at a place that makes a lot of money or is a public job or successful does not mean the best and the brightest are there. That is just a fact. And what we witnessed tonight, two guys, now they're not making Andy Reid, Belichick, Sean Payton money, but being a head coach in the NFL, the starting salary is like $6+ million. Now, I would imagine Nathaniel Hackett's the lowest paid head coach in the NFL. Brandon Staley's probably right ahead of him. But combined, they make, I would guess, around $12 million. Both of them, to me, if they were the head coach of my team, I don't know how I could consume my team because I would be so distraught every single week that they were leading my squad. I think Brandon Staley is a walking, talking fraud. I think he's a politician that has no clue what he's doing. A couple defensive calls here and there, but his defense, for the most part, is not good. And Nathaniel Hackett just has no business being a head coach. But never forget, and let's start with the Broncos, because now they're 2-4. They're headed toward a disastrous season. Nathaniel Hackett's bad. We all can agree he shouldn't be a head coach. I don't blame him for accepting the job. And ultimately, he was signed off by Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson for this job. But their biggest issue is not Nathaniel Hackett, as crazy as that sounds. Their biggest issue is they gave a max contract. Like, let's face it, there were some max contracts given out this offseason, and they all look like fucking disasters. Deshaun Watson did who knows what, right? He's getting sued left and right still. Kyler Murray had no business getting a contract, and so far in 2022 looks like a terrible football player. Now, Russell Wilson, unlike those two guys, never been an issue off the field and been excellent on the field. So unlike Deshaun Watson, no character flaws off the field besides being a weird guy, a little weird for my taste, but never been in any trouble. And unlike Kyler, has actually got it done when it mattered the most. He has a long resume of kicking ass and taking names. So I've said over and over, I understood them giving him the money. Now, I have some people that fire into my mentions or into my DMs, go, John, you haven't been watching him. He's been slipping. No, I've been watching him. I gave him a little bit of a pass when he hurt his finger last year. I think I would have taken the risk, just like the majority of people would have taken the risk. Well, the risk is backfiring. He is not a good player. You heard Troy Aikman tonight, do you see how big Troy Aikman's hands are? The guy's got massive mitts. He's fucking just, his hands are huge. But Russell Wilson just sucks now. He is so terrible. Like on third down, one, he is nowhere near the mobility and the running aspect of his career is just basically gone. He had glimpses early in the game, but as the game goes, it just goes away. And when you call the right blitzes, he cannot run away from a soul. And then his accuracy on third down on these money downs, it feels like he's skipping balls, he's overthrowing balls, behind balls. Like he is just not, he's not a max player. And I think the scary thing is every single week we're waiting like, this is the week, this is the week, this is the week. Then he gets injured, this is the week. I don't think it's coming. I think we're looking at a guy that every week is going to struggle to throw for 200 yards. Now that their running game with Javonte Williams being injured, several offensive linemen being injured, a head coach that's clearly over his head, this whole thing is just an operating disaster. But here's the kicker. The owner, who paid billions of dollars, not like Steve Ballmer, $2 billion, not like David Tepper, $2.5 billion, paid $4.6 billion. Now, they own Walmart. They have unlimited cash. I don't give a shit how much money you have. That's a lot of cash. And I don't know if he knows anything about football. He did not even know Roger Goodell's name. And when you're that rich, you don't have to know Roger's name. And his son-in-law runs the team. But if you come in new to a business and you see the two people at the most important positions, the head coach and the quarterback, just being a disaster, people are going to lose their jobs. And General Payton, who has drafted really well, everyone's like, you got to take Justin Fields. He took Patrick Surtain. Well, I'll tell you this. So far through a year and a half of their careers, it looks like the corner for Denver's headed to the Hall of Fame. And Justin Fields, I'm still bullish on him, but he's got a long way to go to even become a good starter. So Payton is a really good GM, but ultimately he hired Nathaniel Hackett, and he signed off on this massive contract for Russell Wilson. So I would say everyone in Denver right now, beside Russ, because you can't fire the players, especially when you pay them that much money, has got to be walking around on eggshells. It's got to be a pretty tense environment. And you lose to a team that's trying to give you the game. Like they're trying to give you the game. I was thinking about this tonight. Justin Herbert, who, I don't know, listen, he's got his flaws and he made his mistakes tonight, but he is a fantastic talent and he's a really good player. But in his career, at Oregon, he played for Mario Cristobal, who is an elite recruiter. Very questionable offensive schematic mind. Not exactly, Mike Shanahan meets Andy Reid. Then he gets drafted. He has Anthony Lynn as his head coach, who obviously lasts a year and then becomes he's a running back coach currently. That was his first head coach. And then he gets Brandon Staley. Think about Mac Jones, for example. Mac Jones has played for two coaches, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. Say it all the time about Jimmy Garoppolo. Who did he get to play for? I don't know. Bill Belichick, Kyle Shanahan. So, like, who you play for, and it's weird, like, you do kind of get to control who you play for in college, though I'm pretty sure when Herbert originally went to Oregon, Helfrich was there. He was from Eugene, but he's played for bad coaches. Now, Mario is going to be semi-successful in college because he can really recruit, but he is by no means know what he's doing offensively. And these other guys, like Brandon Staley tonight, people always do this, like, he's not the offensive coordinator. I know. He's the head fucking coach. I go back to the Atlanta Falcons, and Kyle Shanahan takes a lot of shit for that 28-3. And some of it is deserved. But ultimately, do you know what name we never hear? Is Dan Quinn. When you're the head coach, you are the boss. So you at any moment can come across the headset to your defensive coordinator or your offensive coordinator, and you know what you can say? Do what I want you to do. Run the ball. And tonight, with less than a minute to go in the first half, the Broncos did not have any timeouts, and they threw the ball on third down. The Chargers did in the red zone. It got tipped. The Broncos ended up getting the ball back after they kicked a field goal, and they drove the field and they kicked the field goal. Cost them 3 points. It almost cost them the game. And it's just basic things like that over and over and over again. Tonight, at the end of the game, they got to call a timeout because the punt team's not ready. It's always something. Honestly, they look like mirror images of each other. And then there was a moment tonight, late in the early in the fourth quarter, where they're in full range. Now, granted, their kicker is injured and has some wrap around his leg, but they're at like the 30-yard line, and it's 4th and 1. Of course, what does Brandon say? Go for it. Now, if you wanted to counter, well, his kicker was hurt, and I'm sure he's talking, or he'll talk. I'm recording this right after the game, and he'll say, I didn't want to risk it from that distance with my kicker being banged up. And there might be some truth to that, but I think he would have gone for it if he had Justin Tucker or Adam Vinatieri. I don't think Brandon Staley has any clue how to be a head coach. He shows signs about specific defensive calls a good blitz, takes out Russ, calls a good coverage. Like, he can do that. But there is a difference between doing that and being the head coach. Because being the head coach, like, when I hear, and Coward's always on the lack of complexity and just variety of the Chargers offense, which I think is more than fair, that is also on the head coach. It is the head coach's job to dictate everything in the organization. You can't just say, well, I'm the head coach, but I'm really the defensive coordinator. This is your problem. Like, you could say that if everything's going well. Like, ultimately, Sean McDermott had been like, listen, Brian Daboll, you handle the offense. Well, everything's fine when the offense is humming. But if the offense had been shitty and Josh Allen had been a problem, Sean McDermott would have been the one taking the heat. It's on you as the head coach. And it feels, watching the night, what they asked Justin Herbert to do is just outrageous. And I can't get wrap my head around that this guy, this great talent, like, ultimately, think how lucky Patrick Mahomes got to come in and go to Andy Reid. Hell, Brian Daboll's turned out, Josh Allen got to spend the first 4 years of his career next to Brian Daboll. Tom Brady forever had Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. That matters. I feel like Justin Herbert is kind of getting worse, kind of feels lost out there. And hell, he's playing injured. And part of this gets back to, I could blame Brandon Staley, but to me, it goes bigger than that. It's the organization. And we talk a lot about what would Sean Payton be with this team. He'll never be around this team. The owner never spends money on coaches. Look at his last 3 coaches. They're all cheap. Mike McCoy was cheap. Anthony Lynn was cheap. Brandon Staley was cheap. Imagine going cheap on the most important, because when you hire a coach, most of the time, like, you're starting from scratch, you're building the team. That guy, obviously the quarterback on the field is the most important guy on a given game. But to me, the value of a coach, if you are not aspiring to get a $15, $20 million coach, that's the going rate. That's the going. College coaches make 10. I would want, if I was an owner, like, how can I get a $15 and $20 million coach? Not a guy that I just pay that much money to, but a guy that is worth that much money. Look at what Lincoln Riley has done to USC. USC was a fucking laughingstock. They couldn't recruit. They couldn't win games. Us on the West Coast kept changing the channel. They were so hard to watch. They get Lincoln Riley. Year 1, they're destined for like 10-2. Why? They paid $10 million a year to get him to leave Oklahoma. That was the going rate. They could have been like, well, maybe we can find a $6 million coach. No, you can't. You got to go for the best. And this is always going to be the Chargers' problem, is the coaching staff. They've been lucky. Now, for 20-plus years, they went from Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers to now Justin Herbert. One thing the Chargers have always done a pretty good job of, had good GMs. They have GMs who can pick good players. A.J. Smith was able to do that in the 2000s. Tom Telesco is now able to do that in the 2010s. But when you have a bad coach, your ceiling is going to be limited. Look at the Chiefs. For the majority of my post-high school life, in the late 90s, once Marty left, all the way up till Andy got there, they were just a middling franchise. And then they got Andy Reid, and the rest is history. The Saints were called the Aints forever. They get Sean Payton, and they became a big-time franchise. The coach makes or breaks your franchise. And the Chargers, for the majority of my adult life, have always had good players. They got good players now. They got Mike Williams. They got Slater. They got Herbert. They got Derwin James. They trade for Khalil Mack. They got Asante Samuel's kid. They got fucking guys all over the field that every team in the league would want on their team. They would immediately start for 99% of the league. Yet you watch them, they're always struggling, tie game, late in the game, whether they're playing the 85 Bears or whether they're playing the worst team in the league. And to me, that directly reflects the coach. They're always in the same game. They've been in the same game for the last decade. And you can't convince me that's not because they're always going cheap on their coach. Now, they all have different flaws. Anthony Lynn, no one had any clue what was going on. Mike McCoy was just, I don't even know, an uninspiring individual. Brandon Staley thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. So they all have their own different flaws, but they ultimately equal the same result on our television when we watch them play. It's pretty insane. They have been playing the same game for a long period of time. And the crazy thing is, they have the most talented quarterback they've had in the last 22 years. From Breeze to Rivers to Herbert. I'm not saying the best. Obviously, Drew Brees going to the Hall of Fame. And Phillip Rivers had an incredible career. Herbert's got a long way to go. But of the bunch, he's the most talented. And it scares and pains me to say that they might find a way to ruin him. He might not be able to overcome that operation, which is ultimately pretty sad.